Hello and welcome to Bookends, a show for teens who love to read. My name is Jordan, I am 16, and I go to Fort Collins High School. I am a member of the IRS, the Interesting Reader Society. It's the teen group for the Poudre River Public Library District. And today I'm not the only member of the IRS. There are also two others here today, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
I'm Jessie, and I'm a freshman, and I'm homeschooled. So.
Oh, very cool. How long have you been in the IRS?
I think for 3 years or so.
Good.
I'm Amy, one of the two Amy's here, and I am a sophomore at Fort Collins High School. I'm 15 years old, and I've been in the IRS for about 3.5 years.
Oh, cool. And of course, we have our very special guest, Amy Kathleen Ryan, here today, and I'll let her say a couple introductory words before we get started with our questions. Just how long you've been writing, things like that. Sorry.
Well, my name is Amy Kathleen Ryan. I've been writing professionally since, well, my first book came out in 2005. My latest book is called Glow. It's a science fiction novel. I'm also known for Vibes, Zen and Xander Undone, and my first novel was Shadow Falls.
Really awesome. I love all of these books, so being here today is like one of the coolest things I can imagine.
Oh, thank you. I'm excited too.
And I know we all have some very good questions to ask Amy, but I'll let Jessie go first and we can get started with these.
Okay. What inspired you to write books?
Oh, reading. I think that's true for most writers. I really started loving books probably when I was in junior high. I didn't really like school. I didn't feel very comfortable in school, and I was sort of one of those kids who kind of wanted to hide. And books just, sort of made it all go away for a while. I think there's no better way to relax than to lose yourself in a story. So, and I guess, somewhere along the way, I just decided I wanted to do that for other people. There was nothing more exciting to me than putting words on a page and having, people I didn't even know read them.
Well, I can tell you, it's definitely working. Thank you. It's worked out for us. Sorry, Amy. Would you like to go next?
Yes. I was wondering what inspired Vibes. Any specific thing?
Boy, it's always hard to think of one thing that brings a book about, but I can tell you it did actually, like a lot of my books, came out of reading. I was reading a lot of Jane Austen, and I read Emma, I think, for the first time shortly before I started writing Vibes, and I really liked the idea of the teen girl who thinks she knows everything, and only to find out that she's way off base. And then at the same time, I was teaching a class on science fiction literature and writing. And in that class, we were reading The Martian Chronicles. And that book, I don't know if you've ever read it, but I highly recommend it. He uses telepathy in a really interesting way. For Ray Bradbury, telepathy actually frustrates meaning. People get more confused. Ray Bradbury.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't. Sorry, keep going.
That's okay. But he, so the telepathy makes things more confusing, not less confusing, and communication becomes more difficult. And so I thought those two ideas were kind of bouncing around in my head, and they sort of melded together into Christy Carmichael in Vibes, a girl who thinks she's psychic. She might be, she might not be. I never really answer that question, and she also thinks she knows everything and kind of finds out she's off base.
It's seriously like my favorite book of all time. That's why it's just so awesome being here with you today.
Thank you. I'm glad you like it.
I love it. I cannot get enough of that book. I have a question. For your book, Zen and Xander Undone, I was just wondering why you based it on sisters. Like, instead of maybe brothers, a sister and a brother, I was just wondering why is it just two sisters?
That's actually a good question because I don't have a sister. I have a brother. And we're pretty close, and we're a lot alike, unlike Zen and Xander. But it's really probably based mostly on my relationship with my brother, because he's a lot like Xander in that he's got this incredible mind, and he can read something once and remember it forever. And I'm kind of jealous of that. I'm more creative, and I just don't have that kind of memory. I don't have that kind of amazing recall. And so it was a little bit about that, about our relationship as brother-sister. And for some reason, I made it two sisters. And I guess I can't really answer why. It's just they came into my mind.
Well, I love that book also. It's so hard to choose with these books. I will let you ask the next question, Jess.
All right. What do you think was your hardest book to write?
Probably my first book, Shadow Falls, just because it was my first book. It's not a particularly complicated story, but I had to do a lot of rewrites before I got it right. And then when I sold it to a publisher, I think it changed. It definitely changed much more radically than any of my other books. Because, maybe I was trying a little too hard, but I was still learning how to write a book with that one. Yeah.
Definitely. I understand how that is. This Amy, out of the two we have here, would you like to ask the next question?
Sure.
Okay.
What was your favorite book to write?
Probably Vibes, just because it's definitely my happiest novel, I think. Christy starts out with a terrible attitude, but it actually has a very positive message. Glow is really dark, and and so are the other two are, Shadow Falls and Zen and Xander and Dun they have darkness in them, but I think they're overall positive stories. Glow, it's a little bit more gritty, and so I think Vibes is in some ways. I laughed while I was writing because Christy cracked me up.
Funny. Oh my gosh,
she's a funny character.
Comes alive in this book. They all come alive, but Christy especially. I have a question about Glow, your newest book. I absolutely loved it, and I'm so glad that it happened. But I was just wondering why you chose to branch off into a sci-fi novel instead of like the fiction. I was just wondering what kind of inspired you to change your genre.
Well, honestly, I've always loved science fiction, and I feel like Vibes has a touch of sci-fi in it with the telepathy. You could call it magical realism too, I guess. But, I've always loved sci-fi, and I guess Glow sort of came from reading Ember, The City of Ember, which I thought was brilliant. And I thought, well, I could write a middle grade about a boy. And that's what Glow, I tried. I tried to write a middle grade about a boy, and I just couldn't keep a girl protagonist away. And it became a YA because as I kept writing, I was like, wow, this is too dark for a middle grade. This is definitely a YA. So
it turned into something amazing. So
thank you.
Even if we don't start out with the same intentions, it ends a little different. Totally worth it.
That's right.
You guys?
So good in the end.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, the whole book. Don't spoil it, but totally agree. All of her books.
Thanks.
What advice would you give to people who want to be writers?
Well, every writer says write a lot, and that's true. Read a lot, that's also true. I'm trying to think of something that not everyone says. If you've got talent, you have to stick to it. You have to be prepared for the fact that it's going to be an incredibly lot of work. It's, you write a book and then you rewrite it and rewrite it and rewrite it until you can hardly look at it anymore. And you have to be willing to do that. You have to be willing to develop that discipline or you won't make it. And the other thing is you have to develop a thick skin. You have to be willing to let other people read your book. You have to be willing to take notes. You don't have to pay attention to all the notes that you get from people, but choose readers you respect and listen to what they're telling you, because writing is a really hard thing to do, and it takes years to learn how to do it well, unless you're a genius, and most people aren't. I sure wasn't.
Okay. Well, I'm going to interrupt here and ask another question. I love writers who have a very specific place who like to write, and I was just wondering if you had one of those, like a specific coffee shop or anything in particular that you love to be at where you write?
Well, no, I don't. Actually, I move around. I like to write in libraries. I like the quiet and the atmosphere, and I like the smell of the books, and I just like libraries. I think they're great.
They are.
I also like coffee shops for writing because the noise kind of helps me focus in. It helps somehow to be in public for me. If I'm at home, I can just putter around, but I get a lot more done in a short amount of time if I'm out in public and there's nothing else to do. So, yeah, coffee shops and libraries.
Cool. Either of you have a question?
Have any books influenced you?
Have any books influenced me? Yeah, probably my biggest influence is Madeleine L'Engle, Wrinkle in Time. She's a sci-fi writer, if you think about it. And I loved how positive her books were. I loved the message of her books, but also her imagination was just incredible. You know, she was writing wild stuff back in the 50s when, you know, Donna Reed was on television. I don't know if you know who that is, but you know, pointy bra women, you know, and she was doing something completely different. And I really respected that. And she was probably the first writer that really made me love reading. And so, yeah, she's probably the biggest influence. But, you know, there are others. Ray Bradbury, you know, like I said, influenced vibes. Glow, I think I was influenced by Jean Duprat. I'm not sure how to say her name. Duprat, I guess. But it was also influenced by other sci-fi I've read over the years, you know.
That's really cool. And I love how it's just fiction and then it's kind of developing into sci-fi, and now you're just we have this amazing science fiction novel that's absolutely great.
Thanks.
I'm sorry, Amy, I kind of cut you off. You had a question, and I'll let you go now.
I was just wondering what it's like for you to read your own novels.
You mean once they're in book form?
Yeah.
I actually don't do that. I am so sick of them that the last thing I want to do. Plus, if I find a mistake, I can't really do anything about it. You know, I should read them because there have been mistakes in the novels, and most of my friends will read them. But yeah, I don't do that. I should, I guess. But you know, you read the galleys. So you know, it's a big pile of paper. And it's got the pages sort of printed out like it's going to look in the book. So, I read it in that form. But, yeah, I don't sit down with the actual...
Well, after you write them, I'm sure you get kind of, oh, boy, after a little while.
What is weird is knowing someone is reading my book. Someone I know is reading my book. That's weird. Because I don't want to ask them. I don't want to put them on the spot if they liked it or not. And, yeah, it's a little uncomfortable.
It's like, did you like it or did you not like it? Well, I can't exactly change that anymore, but
yeah.
You guys can choose whoever would like to go next.
What other hobbies do you have besides writing?
Well, I have 2 little dogs, and I love them, and I take care of them and take them on walks, and
Nothing better than a dog.
snuggle them, and and I have kids, so I don't have a lot of time for other stuff. But yeah, when I have the time, I like walk. I like taking walks outside or jogging if I'm up to it. Not always up to it, but biking with my husband, that kind of stuff.
It's Colorado, a lot of beautiful stuff outside.
Yeah, exactly. I love the outdoors.
You can go, Amy.
What was your favorite subject in school?
In school?
Aside from maybe English.
Honestly, well, I did love English, but I think really my favorite subject for a while was chemistry. And I was really interested in, I thought I might become a scientist. I think that's where my interest in science fiction came from. I was interested in that. I was interested in astronomy. I would read science in my free time. Back when I had the energy for that kind of thing, it takes so much concentration. I don't know if I could still do that anymore. But so I really, and I actually, my favorite teacher was the chem teacher, Mr. Masterman. He was really brilliant, and he was the first teacher who made me feel like I was smart. A lot of teachers thought I was kind of slow because I would, be in the back and I wouldn't participate much, but he realized I was smart, and so maybe that's partly why I got into chem.
Cool. I would never have guessed that. That's so interesting to me.
Yeah.
I actually was just curious if you based any of your characters from any of your books off of people you know?
Yeah, I do that, but I'm actually not usually aware of it at the time, and that's always weird. But I've based characters on my brother and not known it, and then he'll confront me about it. And, like the little boy in Shadow Falls is definitely based on my brother, and I had no idea. He was even named Michael. My brother's name is Michael. I still didn't realize I was basing.
Oh my gosh.
So it's very unconscious, but my characters, as I write the book, at first they sort of start out just as sort of almost as like sculptures that I imagine, and then they get more and more lifelike as I write the novel. And then, you know, once I'm done with the first draft, I might realize this character needs to be a little more combative, a little more this, a little more that. So they're always constantly developing, you know, until really it goes to publication. I'm changing things about my characters.
Yeah. You already said a little bit about how Christy stood out to you a lot, but I was just wondering if there are any other characters in your books that like completely like changed who you were, or that are really your kind of your main focus, that you absolutely could not have a novel without, like obviously the main characters, but was there a character that like particularly stood out a lot to you?
Well, in Glow, I think I sort of see it as there are two principles in that book. You know, there's Waverly and Kieran, and Waverly's sort of a really strong heroine. She's very brave, you know, in a lot of ways that I don't know if I would be that brave in her situation. And she's pragmatic, and she's really intelligent about people. She's good at reading people, and she uses that to help herself when she's kidnapped and taken. Well, I should say what the premise is. There's these Kieran and Waverly are two teenagers who were born on a spaceship deep in space on their way to colonize a planet. They're 40 years into their mission. It'll take 80 years to get to the planet. They're halfway there when their sister ship, which should be light years ahead of them, attacks them out of the blue and steals all of the girls, Waverly included. And so Waverly's on this strange ship away from any safety and anyone she knows, and she has to figure out a way to get back to her home vessel, the Empyrean. In the meantime, Kieran is left on the Empyrean with just a bunch of boys, because most of the adults are slain in the attack, and they have to figure out a way to run this ship and find the girls. So it's a dual narrative told from these 2 points of view. Sorry, but at any rate, Kieran is this very idealistic character. He's idealistic. He has very strong convictions, and Waverly's pragmatism and Kieran's convictions, they start out in love, but you know, things get more complicated as time goes by through the story.
It's very interesting to me, because a lot of novels, like any kind of novel, if there's two characters that fall in love, they generally don't end up together or fall in love or any of the romance until very much later in the book. And I just loved how it just started off so like differently and much more interesting than like the usual book. Like when I first started reading it, I was just like, oh, this is different. I really like this. And it's so much more interesting to read if it just changes a little bit, and it just makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you liked it.
Absolutely. Amy, would you like to go next?
Who's your favorite author to read?
Well, other than Madeleine L'Engle, who I've already talked about, I really like Stephen King. I know he's not great literature. I should probably say some, famous person. I love Charlotte Bronte too. But
Stephen King's up there.
Stephen King, if I ever, the way my reading is I'll devour a bunch of books, and then suddenly I'll be like tired of reading, and I'll watch TV for a week or so and not do any reading. And then if I read a Stephen King, he kickstarts me back into reading because he's so addictive. Not always, not all of his novels are as good as the best ones, but so yeah, I really like him. I think he's a good writer. But there's others, I have a very wide interest. Lately I've been getting into Kate Morton, who writes really good, are you familiar with her?
Yes.
She's really good. She writes historical novels set mostly in England, and I really like her writing too.
I love that, because I'm so fascinated by this, because I'm such a fan of all the books that I just love how all of your interests for the books just are so vast, because I've met a couple authors who are very focused on their one genre that they write through, and this is just so interesting to me.
Yeah, I know. I wish I was actually like that, because I think it's easier to build a career if you're consistent. And if you write the same kind of book over and over again, you develop a readership that likes that kind of book.
Yeah.
But I keep changing, and so I hope readers follow me.
Oh, believe me, they do. At least I do.
Good. That's good. But yeah, those wide interests, I guess they make you interesting as a writer in some ways. So.
All right, I just have another question, actually. I was just curious, what do you find challenging in your writing? I know a lot of people have different things, but I was just curious, what was yours?
Do you mean, what do I expect other people to be challenged by, or
what
like,
do you have, what kind of writer's block do you have? Do you just get distracted, or?
Yeah, I get writer's block. I never used to believe in it, but I do get it. It is easy to get distracted by life. It's a job that no one expects you to be there at a certain time. It's completely up to you to finish your book, you know. You might have a deadline, but it's way in the future, and you can dilly-dally if you want, and you shouldn't. So that can be hard, you know. If I lose the thread, and sometimes it takes me a while to get it back. If I stop believing in the book I'm writing, and I start doubting it too much, I can get blocked. And there are plenty of, I've actually written many more books than this. I think I have 4 unpublished novels.
That's just wrong.
Well, you know, it is, but it isn't, you know, because there was something wrong with them. You know, there was only one novel that I think should still be published, and it just hasn't found its moment yet, and may never get published. But the other 3 I've let go because, you know, sometimes you get to the end of it and you realize this book has been written before, there's nothing new being said here, it's boring, you know, and I can't fix it. And it's better to write your next book than to spend time trying to fix a novel that doesn't have legs.
And it takes a very skilled writer to be able to recognize that, because rather than being like, I think this will work, it's just, you know, when it's done, and that's just such a talent that a lot of people don't have or never will get. So that's really cool.
Yeah, you have to have, I think that's where the thick skin comes in. You have to be strategic about your career, and you also have to be willing to let things go when, you know, when they're not working.
We already have so much stuff that does work, so it's okay.
Thanks.
Okay, I feel like this might be kind of a silly question, and I've always wondered this, and I was just wondering, where does the cover art come from? Like, that's just, did you come up with that? Okay.
No, they, publishers have super geniuses who design covers for you.
I understand now.
So, yeah, like this was done, there's actually, if you open the book, you can see usually the cover art is given.
Oh, wow. See, just happens when I'm not very observant.
Yeah, it's given a little byline in the copyright information. Michael Morgenstern did this cover, which I always loved.
It's really cool.
It's beautiful. You know, so each book you can find out who designed it. Sometimes they'll have someone in-house design it. Sometimes they'll go to someone who freelances in book design, but it's a whole little industry unto itself.
That's really cool. I'm very attracted to the covers of books, so I'm like, if I see something that doesn't look very interesting to me, and I'll be like, I don't want to read that, and then I'll see something like this, and I'll be like, oh, I need to read this, and then I'm always wondered, so, okay, sorry, that was kind of a silly question.
Well,
People do that.
Okay.
Because I do that.
That makes me feel a little less silly then.
Yeah, the cover really is the most important part of selling a book. And, you know, honestly, this got changed a lot. This book, we went through 4 completely different designs before we finally decided on that one, and the paperback is unfortunately going to have a different design again. This book started out completely different. Zen and Xander Undone had a different hardcover. But, you know, if a book isn't selling particularly well, the publisher will try. Yeah, you can see.
Yeah,
that's, you know, now that I look at it, I guess I understand kind of why. I don't know. What do you guys think of that cover?
I personally love this.
I like that one.
Jessie is my sister, so I love it because it's just so sister.
Yeah, I know. It shows how completely different they are, because she's wearing jeans and a t-shirt, and she's wearing all black, and
it really shows their characters, and it's.
Yeah, I liked it too when I saw it, but it just didn't sell well, despite it actually got great reviews. So then they did this, which it's a little more bland, but
it's still good.
I liked
still
it.
Like that, yeah.
I liked it. So I thought this one would work too.
Yeah, covers change just the books sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that kind of offbeat question about that. Do you guys have
interesting.
any other questions you'd like to ask before?
I don't think so.
Okay, Amy, do you have any more?
What made you want to become a writer instead of a scientist?
Honestly, part of it was, you know, I went to college not knowing what I wanted to do. I thought I was going to be a chemistry major. And I realized I loved the theory of chemistry, but I didn't actually like the lab work. The meticulous, measuring, weighing, you know, it's just so boring. And I didn't enjoy that. So I realized I didn't probably belong in a laboratory. And so then I discovered anthropology, and I got really interested in that. But toward the end of my school career, I realized I don't know what I'm going to do as an anthropology major. What I could be an anthropologist, but that's a tough field, and I wasn't sure I was prepared for that kind of field work, which can be physically rough,
It's very competitive, isn't it?
Yeah, anything in academia is, although I've chosen a pretty competitive field. But yeah, I have, I guess. I'm pretty lucky. So I don't know, I guess I just decided what I really wanted to be was a writer. Somewhere along the line. It just sort of started happening naturally, and I took a great creative writing class my senior year in college from a woman named Vicki Lindner, who was a really talented teacher. And I don't know, it just sort of fell into place, and I realized that's what I wanted.
Cool. I was just going to ask one more question. I know a lot of writers, like most writers nowadays, use computers to write, and I was just wondering if you prefer to write by hand or by typewriter, even just anything. I was just wondering what your very favorite form of writing was, physically.
Well, I do write on a computer. I did write Shadow Falls longhand because I didn't own a computer when I started writing. I wrote it longhand, then I bought a computer, actually a word processor, and I typed it into the word processor, and but yeah, a computer's really fast, and since I wrote Shadow Falls, I did a lot of transcription for researchers in education, and I would just transcribe for hours and hours and hours, and you get to be a really fast typist. So I can actually type almost as fast as I can think. So
wow, that's a skill. That's a skill
I can write fast. Take a keyboarding class.
I will.
You have to. Yeah, it's the only way. You can't do and be fast.
My dad does that. I'm like, let me teach you how to type.
Typing is just not something I'm strong at, but now I want to be.
Yeah.
Amy, sorry.
Yes.
Do you have any more questions before we're out of time?
Gosh.
If you don't, that's totally fine. Guys, this was so fun. Amy, I've learned so much about you, which is so interesting to me, and that sounds so crazy the way I'm saying it, but I'm just such a huge fan of your books, and so this was really great for me. Guys, this was so fun. Thank you so much for joining me here today, and thank you for watching Bookends.